Let's call the January 28th meeting of the Hammond Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals to order. Could we please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a roll call, please?
Roger Brown,
Here.
Kathleen Hill,
Here.
William Hutton,
Here.
Cynthia Hassel. Here. Dan Faulkner. Here. Five present, we have quorum.
Mr. Poland, you want to handle number 3?
Yes, tonight we have election of officers. We have the chairperson and the vice chairperson. At this time, I'd like to open for nominations to the chair for the position of chairperson. Are there any nominations?
I'll make a nomination for Kathleen Hill for president.
Okay, we have a nomination for Kathleen Hill for chairperson.
Sorry.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Roll call vote for having Kathleen Hill elected as chairperson for 2025.
Cynthia Hassel.
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Yes. Roger Brown.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
Okay, I'd like to open the nominations for vice chairperson. Are there any nominations for vice chairperson?
I'd like to make a motion for Mr. Roger Brock for vice chairperson.
Okay, hopefully I did this last time. Do we have a second?
Second?
Did I forget the second last time? Okay, all right. Are there other nominations for vice chairperson? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Roll call vote for Roger Block to be appointed as vice chairperson for 2025.
Cynthia Hassel.
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Yes. Roger Brown.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
That concludes the elections of officers, and I return the meeting back over to the chairperson.
The next item on our agenda is the minutes for September 24th, 2024 meeting. Do we have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion to accept.
Do
I'll
we have-
second.
We have a motion and a second. We have a roll call vote.
Cynthia Hassel.
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Roger Brown.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
We have the minutes for October 29th, 2024. Do we have a motion to accept?
A motion to accept?
I'll second.
Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Cynthia Hassel.
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Roger Brock.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
We have one item under old business, is Z-24-12, petition of Raphael Hermosilio for a variance of use zoning title, ordinance title 8.11, parent 6, to allow an event-based general facility in a C1 local commercial district to title 7.10, permit use located at 3534 through 36, 165th Street with the city of Hammond, Lake County, Indiana.
Okay. For the board, you should have in your packet a letter that came from the representative of the petitioner asking that that this petition is withdrawn.
So we need to accept this letter?
I don't know if our attorney is going to require a formal acceptance. It's just noted in the record that it is withdrawn.
You don't need to It's in the record. You don't need to formally do anything with it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Westland.
So this will be in our records that this case is withdrawn, so there is no need to continue to keep the information on.
No, there's no reason, there's no reason to keep the information on that. Obviously, if the
Well, we
person,
were asked to bring it back.
pardon?
We were asked to bring it back and keep it. So there's no-
Because we are assuming that he was
Right,
going to go
right.
forward. So at this point in time with the withdrawal, you no longer need to keep it. If something
Okay.
changes that he wishes to do this again, then he's going to start all over. It'll be all new documents.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with new business. We have D-25-01, petition of NWI Holman LLC for conditional use regarding Title Section 24.30 to operate an event space general facility upon the property located at 5231 Holman Avenue in a C3 Central Business District in the city of Hammond. Have all the notification requirements been met?
Yes, they have.
Do we have anyone that would like to speak in regard to this?
If I may, yes,
Can you state your name and address, please?
absolutely. Scott Yaney. My business address is 3 Lincoln Way, Suite 201 in Valparaiso, Indiana. I am here this evening as the attorney for NWI Holman LLC. First of all, thank you. It's always great to start off the new year with you folks. I think I had the honor of doing that a few times. We've been busy in the prior months getting ready for you a number of petitions tonight. There are in total 5 petitions. I need to go sequentially for Mr. Poland, but I also don't want to keep us here all night, so I'll try to keep it moving. But I don't want to overlook any questions you have along the way, so by all means flag those and I'll make sure to address anything you might have for me. This is concerning 5231 Holman. It's a building we all know quite well. It was Bank Calumet and First Midwest Bank and the various iterations. And it was vacant for many years, had water flooding the basement, had a lot of deterioration, a lot of the stuff we all remember. I started my practice right across the street in 1992 and was in and out of that bank often in those years, and even represented the bank and worked with Mr. Bellamy on projects, and just have some really wonderful memories, and some folks like Larry Bluthman and just some really wonderful people there that also took me around the bank and would show me some of the interesting areas. Well, fortunately, these folks have, and I'm referring to Anastasia Fratto and Sharon Hart behind me. They're here this evening. They are part of the NWI development team that's doing all of this work. And they brought this building back to life. And we were here in 2022. I was here before you. And at that time, we obtained approval from this board to have residential units, market rate apartments in the floors 2 through 9 of that building. And that was approved by this board. Now, we're coming back to you with a new conditional use approval that I'll talk to you about in just a moment. But as part of that, we need to ask you to reauthorize and reissue what we did in 22, because anytime we approach you again, that all comes up for your consideration. So that is part of the request tonight. But specifically what brings us here this evening is the first floor. As you may have remembered, it's a grand space, 38-foot high ceilings. It has woodwork that was in 1924 was brought over on a boat from Germany that's still in there, that's prominent on the archways, right? There's just some fascinating features of that bank. Well, what they would like to do is put that first floor magnificent space to good use, and what they're seeking is approval of a conditional use to conduct an event space general facility. And that's a category that was added to our zoning ordinance in, was it 2023, Brian?
2024.
2024, sorry. In 2024, there was an amendment to the zoning ordinance that had a number of provisions that related to event spaces. There's something called an event space limited facility. We're here for an event space general facility. So I'll talk to you in a moment about what they specifically have in mind, but just to orient us, so this is 5231 Hammond. We are in the C3 business district, right in the downtown area. And I've talked to you a little bit about the building. I know you all know well. There are photographs and illustrations in my material that you can reference in the supporting letters or in the exhibits. But if I go over anything that anybody would like me to kind of direct you where it is, by all means, let me know or throw up a hand. The business they want to run there is, the business will be called the Reserve a Grand Venue. For short reference, I'm going to refer to it as the Reserve this evening. So already these folks have put in $29 million in that building. And they've had some bumps along the way. We had the supply shortages that put up their, the material cost along the way, and all the things that we had with the tail of COVID. And then they had a water problem again, where they had to redo some work because of, I knew across the street, there's a river that basically runs under downtown Hammond. And it finds its way into those buildings. They've got that fixed now, and they're moving, but it did slow down their project, and it increased the expense of the building, but they've stuck with it. And as indicated, they have $29 million into that building. They anticipate opening for this spring, so in the coming months, they anticipate that they will have residents living in the building. And hopefully you'll get a chance to see the building. I've included some of the photos of some of the work in my material to give you an idea of how they have restored the elements that are there, painstakingly restored those elements, and they want to make those elements a feature of the Reserve. Throughout this process, they've integrated with the city in various areas, certainly with you folks, with Mr. Poland, also with the mayor's office, economic development. There are a lot of components to putting together a project like this, and the city has been a tremendous partner throughout the process. I've given you a list of, I don't want to drag us too much down on some of the things they've done, but they certainly are interesting. And on page 4 of my supporting letter, I give you kind of an overview of some of those areas and some of the things they've done. With the Reserve now, they're going to have a grand hall. We have those high pillars, those classic pillars with the imported wood and chandeliers, kind of the features we remember from the past. And they want to use this unique, one-of-a-kind space as a venue. It will be for anything from weddings to business events, city functions, could be a mayor's address. They will have corporate events, those types of get-togethers. And they will have, and we'll talk about this later this evening, they will have some music events there. Whether that be, they have I think it's a dueling pianos presentation that they anticipate putting on. But they want to really bring some life into the downtown, and they want to utilize this space. They anticipate approximately 50 events per year. And we'll address this a little bit later. Most of these events, I was going to say, it depends on the type of event. Weddings typically are going to be a weekend. Corporate events may be during the day, and then your music events, a lot of their events will be during the evening, fundraisers and so forth that might want to use the hall. It can seat, well, it has fire code occupancy of 398. They anticipate, however, that it's, many of their events will be much, much smaller than that. But if they can comfortably seat 268 people, and they have a variety of configurations they could do within the space. And some of those I've described in the material or given you illustrations to give you an idea. We need to, this is a conditional use, so we look to section 9.11 and specifically subsection 12, which is the event space general facility, which is further than described in title or in section 1850 is our specific reference. That's the new ordinance amendment. And they would like to be able to have authority to conduct this conditional use. In making this request, they understand, and specifically any approval is conditioned upon the fact that their food service and catering is subject to Lake County health provisions. So they're going to have food service there in connection with these events, and that's subject to health department provisions. They will be able to serve alcoholic beverages. They have secured a permit, and so they'll be subject to all of the requirements of the Indiana Alcohol Tobacco Commission. They're certainly subject to the Indiana Code, a number of public restrooms. They've done this build-out work and had it approved downstate, but if they have any modifications, they understand, and it's a requirement that they'll have to get the required permits and any sign-offs to do that. They will have to adhere, well, let me go up one before I get to noise. Music and entertainment offered will be specifically in connection and to the extent that is authorized by this board. That will be a developmental variance petition that I'll present to you momentarily. Noise standards will be in accordance with the Municipal Code Chapter 97 and the Hammond Department of Environmental Management. And they'll conclude their events by midnight per the requirements of the Title 19 ordinance. These folks are not new to operating a venue, and quite remarkably, a venue that's even older than the venue they're taking over here, because they operate the Barrel House, the venue, which was an 1871 building in Michigan City that they restored, and they conduct the same type of events at that facility, and they've done so very successfully. They hosted their first wedding reception in June of 2020, so obviously it wasn't the ideal time to open a venue, but they've been through a lot, they've learned a lot in that process, and if you haven't a chance to visit the Barrel in Michigan City, the Barrel House in Michigan City, you'll see that it's just an absolutely meticulously restored space that serves as just a beautiful backdrop for any types of events. And they have had a wide range of events there, be it town hall meetings, obviously a lot of weddings, life celebrations, and they have maintained a very high professional status in operating that venue, and they've been very, very well received and appreciated in Michigan City by the community, including the city itself. And they're very highly, if you just look at their reviews, they're very highly reviewed and supported by their clientele. They want to bring a very similar experience to Hammond. It'll be the same folks operating it, and these are the folks that have been involved with restoring this building. So that's why, in fact, Sharon is here this evening. She is instrumental in those operations and will be here. So, as you know, we have a set of criteria that we need to establish, right? We need to show you that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community, right? So we have set out that that this conditional use request is going to meet with all the requirements of the Indiana Building Code, any fire and safety, fire and life safety attributes. The building is fully sprinkled. Smoke detectors, CO detectors, all linked to central monitoring. It's going to be linked to the Hammond Fire Department. Prior to occupancy, it will be checked out by the fire department. In addition to the fire safety elements, they have robust personal security attributes, including a security system with cameras at all entry locations, elevator, lobby, stairwells, and other areas that will be monitored by a third-party service. They have, one of the things to consider here is that in attracting residents and people who are going to be living in the building, they wanted to have those folks feel very safe in the community. They're moving into an area, a downtown that we've envisioned as being something new, but it's also in a transition phase. And so they've spent a lot of time and thought and money to make sure that residents who will be moving in will feel secure. And that is at the entry systems, for controlled entry for guests, vendors, tenants who live there. And it will be monitored by a third-party service and actively monitored. So that's an essential part of all of this as well. They previously obtained, they went through the Hammond Building Department, submitted downstate, gathered all approvals. If there is, most of this work is done. If there are any modifications of anything to do, they will certainly seek those approvals. We also have to demonstrate that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. We think quite to the contrary, adding a vibrant entertainment venue is just the sort of thing that is needed in a downtown community. We're seeking to add vitality and help bring Jeff Speck's vision to life downtown, and having a venue downtown supported by these folks, and then also bringing in a lot of new people into the outside who would otherwise not have occasion to visit our downtown will only enhance those surrounding businesses that are looking to have, more exposure, and it will introduce, the wider community to what is going on in downtown Hammond and all the changes. And certainly having a $29 million investment will not be at all harmful to the neighboring properties and their values. So we think that it'll greatly enhance the surrounding downtown community and serve the vision that Hammond has and that is articulated in the downtown Hammond plan. We need to show you that the approval will not have an adverse effect on the density of the adjacent area and will not be burdened, the area will not be burdened by an excessive number of similar uses. This is a unique venue. There are other venues, right? We have the Toll Theater. And so those are the types of venues that you'd want more concentrated in a downtown area. But this is, we'll talk to you more as we're presenting the developmental variances. They've carefully considered the ability of the infrastructure to support what they are doing downtown, and we don't think it will have an adverse effect by burdening with an excess number of uses. There will not be an adverse impact on the transportation network. We need to show you that. And I've gone through some of the details up there. I don't want to drill down too much when we have so much more to do this evening. There will not be an adverse impact on environmental or natural resources. The approval will not have an adverse impact on historical, architectural, cultural, and archaeological resources. As you may know, and as Mr. Pullen definitely knows and Mr. Novak knows, this is a building of historic significance. It's rated outstanding on the Indiana Historic Sites and Structures Inventory, and the fact that these folks were able to bring this building back from its vacant state and maintain what made it so special in the first place speaks to the fact that this is exactly what we'd like to see with this type of building. The approval does not substantially interfere with the comprehensive city zoning plan, and here I'm going to specifically reference the downtown Hammond master plan that was prepared by Speck and Associates. This is precisely, if we look through that plan, this is precisely the sort of thing and venue that plan had in mind for the downtown. It's the introduction of people to the downtown is, really the lifeblood for any successful downtown, and this will enhance that effort tremendously. We don't have conflict with other provisions of the zoning ordinance. And let's see, then the 10th one is, as I said at the outset, we're requesting reauthorization of the approval from the prior conditional use permit. It was granted in 2022, but the case number is Z2125. So that sets forth the basis for the conditional use approval, and I think Brian would like to stop here and then let you folks take up any further questions concerning the conditional use application.
Do you have any questions at this time? You mentioned vendors. What do you mean by vendors? You mean as far as within this area, there will be, when we're seeing as far as events facilities, we're usually seeing as far as setting up different people coming in to sell things. That's what you mean by vendors? Or vendors
Think of it
by
more
the
as
alcohol?
entertainment. So weddings, they will have, I don't know, maybe, I'm sorry?
In event space.
Yeah, but things such as weddings you might have a city address there because it suits, it's a big inside space that will accommodate a lot of different setups. You might have I have legal training. It would be a good environment to have what we call a CLE presentation and all sorts of.
You're not like having somebody set up a jewelry display or anything
No,
like that?
no,
Or
not
that
that
type of
type.
vendors or anything?
Correct.
Okay.
If I may, I appreciate Ms. Hill's question on that point, but just for the board's benefit, event spaces, as we indicated, was a brand-new ordinance that was adopted last year. It was intended to address some issues that we were facing all over the city. In the prior to this provision, we used the term place of assembly as a place where people would have these types of activities, events, so to speak. We were finding that obviously Dynasty is the most obvious one that comes to everybody's mind. But we're seeing there are a lot of smaller ones that were out there where people were having weddings or things after a funeral and baby showers and all those kinds of things where you have a smaller amount of people gathering compared to what this one is. The other thing to point out, because Mr. Yaney referenced the Toll Theater. The Toll Theater is identified, is a theater, and it is identified separately in the zoning ordinance. So we would not consider that to be an event space under this jurisdiction. So just to clarify that.
And I probably would have helped to, there's a definition in the zoning ordinance of just what an event space general facility is. I'm going to pick and.
Well, we normally have a different aspect when things are brought to the board here, so
Yeah,
that's why I was questioning when you use the word vendor.
right.
Well, I mean, it is, and I think the important thing to understand, this is the first
one we had
time,
like this.
the board is having an event space conditional use. A little bit of background saying that all of the pre-existing ones, we have met with most or all of them, and we have presented to them what the new ordinance is and see if they were compliant with the new regulations. They are technically legal nonconforming based on the, the previous regulations, but we are finding the vast majority of those spaces, those previous spaces, are compliant with the new ordinance. So that was a very positive thing that came out of all of our investigations.
I think the idea is gatherings is kind of a gathering space is kind of some of the buzzwords from, and it's in section 150, the definitions, but, and it says may or may not have food and beverage service, including meetings, receptions, weddings, banquets, parties, or similar. And then there's a specific exclusion for places of worship, which you might.
Which is another category in the
Yes,
zoning
it's
ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a comment. I've been in that building before it was abandoned, when it was used as a bank and an office building. And I've been there since you've been working on it. And I commend your efforts as an architect. You've done a great job. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. That's it.
I don't think there's anyone in the public.
You forgot to see if staff had questions?
Oh, staff, do you have any questions?
Yes. Tom, would you ask the question?
Yeah, and thanks for covering what you've covered, Scott. I think you did a pretty good job. I know that you mentioned that 398 was maximum occupancy set by fire code, right?
398, yeah.
Yeah, and that you guys can comfortably see 268.
Right.
So, I know that certain events may exceed the 268. I think you'd call them like cocktail type events where you might not have everyone seated, but there might be tables where you can stand around, things like that, probably more business type meetings. Was there a number you guys were thinking as advertising as your maximum occupancy?
Oh, in terms of
Yeah,
reaching
'cause I
out to
understand
clientele and saying, hey, what is our maximum?
Yeah, because my understanding is 398 may be the maximum fire code, but not.
250 is what we're seeing for.
You have to come to the microphone and identify yourself.
State your name,
Hi.
address.
Hi.
Sharon Hart, NWI Development. I'm with the bank, obviously, and the reserve. We are marketing like 250 to 270 for sit-down.
Okay.
Tom, did you indicate that there was another number that you
Yeah,
saw?
I know you guys also were advertising and you had mentioned other types of events that may be larger than that. Was there, for like the cocktail style events, was there a number you guys had for?
We really don't anticipate more than 300 in the space to be.
Okay, yeah, because I remember reading somewhere that it was in promotional materials 350 you guys had mentioned.
I said in the configuration, I think that's what the reference is. It says it could be configured, for example, with high
Scott?
boys and
Highest
standing.
one was
Microphone.
290.
So I'll just say, so that's the fire code number is, 398. Kind of as a comparison, we had mentioned Barrel House, the venue. Our fire code there is 315. We've never had more than 200 people at an event, cocktail style or otherwise. Okay. So, I would say I really don't anticipate it would be anything like that.
Okay, yeah, no, because, and I think if I recall where I saw this, I think I might have saw the figure 350 and some of the emails and the website and stuff you guys were putting out there.
So I guess ultimately what the question is, that we have the figure that we've been operating on that applies to all the other cases here of the 398. And then if, as what Tom presented to me, there was something he saw that there was a number of 350 being advertised. So we're trying to understand if, are you going to amend your petition to reduce the number to a lower number than 398?
We can do that.
I'm not
I mean, I
asking
don't
you
anticipate-
to, I'm just saying, we're hearing all these numbers and we're trying to understand what are we sticking to?
Yeah.
Well,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Well, let him answer this question before you go off in another direction.
I wasn't, but go ahead, answer the question.
So I've set forth what's the capacity, basically what the fire code allows, 398. And that's the request being consistent with the fire code. Practically, as a business, in how they market, my guess is they will never market anywhere close to that number. It's hard to foresee anything they could ever do in the space.
Yeah.
So if they have 260, that would be all right. They will accept it.
Okay, so in the context of that, then you're not going to change your number, you're going to stick to the 398?
Yes.
That's really the gist of our question. I don't think we need to expound upon it any further. We were just asking for that clarification.
Oh, okay, great.
I have a question.
Mr. Hutton, you were trying to
Okay.
ask something?
I was going to ask a question, but since you put the gavel down on this,
By all
No,
means.
you
Mr.
have a
Hutton,
question for
you
the-
have a right to overrule me, so.
by all means.
Do you have a question for the staff?
how did you arrive at the 398, I guess is my
Fire
question.
department.
That's a fire code. That's a fire code.
How did the fire department arrive at that number?
I believe that's law square footage is how that is derived and how many people can fit within a space. It's a fire.
Oh, okay.
Fire code, but you may know more specifically than that, more details than that. Do you?
Yeah, Mr. Hutton, our experiences at the fire department, when it does its evaluation based on whatever their criteria is, that number tends to be much higher because it could be standing room, it could be whatever. I think what they're saying from a practical basis, if you have, there's only chairs can fit into the space to allow people to walk around and not trip and fall and all that kind of stuff. So that's why, practically speaking, your numbers are less. And so therefore, if they are going to stick to what the fire department has determined, then that's fine.
Thank you.
I have a question for the staff. Depending on the number, would they be required to have police officers stationed there for the venue?
Well, I think that's a good question, maybe direct to them. What were you guys'
Yeah.
plans for security? I
Because
know
you
you had
talked-
security.
We
You
have
talked
reached out to
about
the-
security as far as cameras, but.
Yeah,
you
no,
know, if
we
you're
will have
drinking-
on-staff security. We've reached out to the city of Hammond to connect with officers who will come in and they'll be off-duty, and they will come in, we pay them for that. Typically, you know, if it's 50 or under, or if there is no alcohol, we do not necessarily require that. But when alcohol is required, we do require officers at the site until 30 minutes after the event closes.
And that's in your contract with the
Yes.
lessees?
Exactly. And they
Okay.
sign off initial that, you know, they understand they'll come in, you know, they'll be responsible for paying the officer, but we don't allow an event without them
Okay.
at that size. Yeah.
And I just want to invite you guys, you know, there's a thing called the FUSA system. A lot of gas stations and places like that have it, but if you want to talk to, I can get you in touch with, I believe it's Lieutenant Goatee at the police department. You can hook up your security camera system
Oh.
so that the police can see it at all times. You know, if there is an emergency, they can, down the street, they can take a look and,
Okay, that's
So-
nice to know.
yeah, I'll get you that information. It's just
Please do.
something that I know the police department likes to let new businesses know.
Yeah, please do that. I
called
appreciate
Fuses.
that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. This is staff, any other questions?
Nope, we have no more
Board have
questions.
any other questions? All right. We will open it for a public hearing. Is there anyone in the, online or in the building or like to speak for or against it? Do we know about anyone online? I don't see anybody here in
Yeah,
person.
Anyone on Zoom, now would be the time if you're a part of the public to make a comment. I believe everyone's unmuted, it looks like maybe.
Pardon?
Oh yeah, if you're muted, I believe it's the bottom left corner of your Zoom screen to unmute, or press the space bar to unmute if you're online.
How long do we wait?
You asked the question 3 times.
Oh. Right? Anyone have any comments for or against? Anyone have any comments for or against?
Yeah, this is Patrick Maslevy. I'm a business owner in the area and was just wondering, I know there's going to be, if it's going to come up later, but the concern I was wondering is going to be addressed about parking and how the parking will be handled for such a large group of people in the area, and whether security will be allowed or provided to cover those parking areas that may spill out into the rest of the area. In particular, what I'm concerned about is going back to the days of the nightclub that was down there. Our business was just a few hundred feet away from it, and we would come in every Monday morning and find bottles of spent alcohol and all kinds of things on our property, and I'm concerned that that will be addressed somehow.
If I may, Mr. Maslevy, we do need to have your address for the record.
53 Munich Court.
Okay, thank you. And
In
then,
Hammond.
to the point, your questions, yes, if you want to repeat them when we get to the parking, you are certainly more than welcome to do that.
Okay.
So as far as when they address this, we will wait till we get to that?
Yes,
Okay, so he will stay with us, apparently.
we're going to address it regardless of.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
the
That's all right.
parking will be addressed in the last 3 cases of so they will be coming up in cases we're considering right after this one.
Anyone else that would like to speak or ask questions? Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? We will close this period of public comment. Any other questions from board members? Any other questions from staff members?
No.
Okay. We have the staff report at this time
Yes, good evening, everyone.
for Z 25-01 for the conditional use.
Yes. So I'll be reading, I'll save you guys the trouble, I'll just be reading the staff recommendation and conditions requested. But I did want to note that on page 3, I did notice one typo I made. It says the kitchen and bar at southwest corner of building. That kitchen food staging area, that's going to be at the northeast corner of the building.
Okay, can you wait? You didn't paginate. So
Sorry,
let's
page 3.
look. Yes, that's a new word. Didn't you like it?
Yeah, so it's the second line under section A on page 3. I said southwest corner building for the food staging area and alcohol serving. That'll actually be at the northeast corner of the building. My apologies, we'll make sure that's fixed. The southwest corner building, just to be clear, that is where the residents of the bank will enter entirely separately from the event space. Just so you guys understand. I had it flipped. But besides that minor typo change, moving on to the staff recommendation for the conditional use requested under Z2501. Staff has reviewed the petitioner's request and recommends that the BZA grant the conditional use should the board feel the petitioner has met the standards subject to the following conditions. Approval of the developmental variance cases known as Z2502, A, B, C, and D in compliance with all of those cases conditions. 2, maximum occupancy shall be set at 398 persons unless determined to be a lower figure by the Hammond Fire Department following changes to event space at a future time. 3, rough and final approvals by City of Hammond on all required inspections of work performed under building permit number B24-02832. And a reminder that pursuant to Title Section 24.42 subsection 3 of the Hammond zoning ordinance, should the BZA grant the conditional use for event space general facility under this petition, the board is requested to reauthorize the residential above ground floor conditional use granted for BZA case Z2125.
Can you
Find the-
explain what you mean by the last paragraph you read?
So Scott had touched on this. In September of 2021, the BZA had granted a conditional use for residential above ground floor. That was the bank, the 100 market rate apartments that they've been installing. Because of the way the zoning ordinance and state statute is written, any additional conditional uses approved, kind of take over, replace the old conditional use, unless the board reauthorizes it. So if the board approves it today's conditional use, they must reauthorize the one they approved in 2021.
All right, if we do approve this, can we also reauthorize the
You have to make a separate
We would
motion
have to
after you
make a-
get through everything.
separate motion after
Yes.
everything?
Yes.
Okay. Just so we're all on the same page. All right. We have no amendments to the staff report.
There was a technical correction to the staff report.
Technical correct on page
Yes.
Any additional amendments or comments? Board would like to add to this? Okay, we have our proposed findings of fact. Any comments from our members? No comment? All right. Do we have a motion to accept the staff report and the corrections, technical corrections that have been made? As findings of fact and accept the staff report.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a roll call vote.
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner, Roger Brock,
Yes.
William Hud,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill,
Yes?
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Number one taken care of, and we will move to.
You still have two more motions. You need a
Oh,
motion
now
to,
you're correct. It's been a while since we've had a meeting. I
it's not been
know.
that long, Kathy.
I know.
You need a motion to approve the
Approve.
conditional use
Do
with
we
the
have a-
staff recommended conditions or not.
Yes, do we have such a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do
As
we
long as
have
they-
a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Brock, did your motion include with the staff?
Yes, that was about
Conditions?
to. It does include that, yes.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Yes. Roger Brock,
Yes.
William Hud,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes?
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Okay, the last motion is that if the board would move to reauthorize the conditional use Z21-25.
So you want this done now instead of after all of the other ones are done, correct?
It has to happen at the conditional use, because this, your motion that approved it just undid it. So you
Okay.
now need to reauthorize it.
All right, do we have a motion to reauthorize?
I'll make a motion to reauthorize the conditional use granted for Z 21-25.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Roger Brock.
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant all of them. Okay? Now we will move to Z-25-02, parens A, petition of NWI Holman LLC for developmental variance regarding Title Section 19.18.50.05, parens D, to allow music or entertainment as a limited accessory use with music, which music may be the primary purpose at no more than 30% of the event held at the petitioner's event space facility during any given year at the property located at 5231 Holman Avenue in a C3 Central Business District in the city of Hammond. That's a long one.
Yes.
Okay? Mr. Janey, are you still presenting?
Yes, if
And
I
I
may.
will assume all the requirements have been met for all of these?
Yes, they have.
All right.
All right. Just, I won't go into the other cases, but there are 4 developmental variances. This is the first. It's basically providing music or entertainment up to a limited number of events. Then there are going to be 3 petitions after. They're all somewhat interrelated and mostly relate to Patrick. Hi, Patrick. Mostly relating to parking, and that's when we'll take up Patrick's issues and hopefully address some of his questions. So the first one is, we were very careful on the wording here, so I'm going to say it one time and hopefully not botch it hereafter. And you'll see why if we look at the ordinance, but I don't want to take us too far down that path. So we're seeking approval to provide music or entertainment as a limited accessory use, under which the music could be the primary purpose at no more than 30% of events held at the reserve that we've all been talking about, this event space venue that you just approved. There are a number of times that they would like to do music only, entertainment only. There could be, a number of types of acts or presentations that would fall in that. It could be a chamber orchestra. It could be all sorts of things. The dueling pianos I referenced. But they'll have certainly music at, for example, at a wedding, but it's interrelated to the wedding. This will be for a limited number of events during the year, music only as a possibility. Now, whether and how much they'll do, they don't know right now, but they, in talking with staff, we've arrived at the number of 30%, no more than 30% of their events in any one year. So, that's the request. I'm going to focus only on the music aspect right now, and we have to show you the criteria again. So we're seeking a developmental variance. There's a standard that says otherwise in the zoning ordinance you couldn't serve or provide music only at an event unless this board authorizes it. So that's what we're here seeking tonight. So we have to show you that approving that developmental variance would not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, general welfare of the community. A lot of those issues I did talk to you in the first presentation about the codes, the fire codes that are in place, and how we've met those and will meet any additional requirements that could apply. We have shown it, at least as the music venue specific, the existing building complies with current building and fire codes. The occupancy is 398 we talked about. We're not going to bump up on that number. We anticipate, so we said 30%, and I know staff report will have a specific number, but I at least want to be consistent about what we've asked for. We've asked for no more than 30%, or we've agreed that no more than 30% of their events will be music and entertainment ticketed events. They anticipate 50 events during the year. That's their kind of what their anticipated schedule looks like right now. So we don't think that there will be any safety issues that arise. We've talked to you also about, you've heard that they would have security at these events certainly as well. And so we don't think that we present any health safety issues with hosting these events. They'll be of a certain nature. They're protecting their investment. This is, $29 million and people living in the building. They are going to uphold very high standards for the type of activity that they will allow in this space. The last thing they want to see is anything damaged in there or that would even negatively impact on people's outside perceptions of their facility, which they wanted to serve a certain clientele. We have to show that the use, similar to the last time, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. We don't think that providing entertainment at this limited number of events will cause any adverse effect on the surrounding properties. It's a large building, as we know. This is self-contained. Our music is not bleeding outside of the walls of this facility. If you remember just kind of how this building is set out and just the structure and the stone and the massiveness of the building, where the entertainment takes place will be well insulated within this building. And we don't have residences next door, for example. These events will be primarily during the evening or perhaps during the weekends, but they'll be at a time when the downtown traffic is of a different sort and more of the type that you would expect to have a music event. So we don't anticipate any adverse effect on surrounding properties. Then we need to also show you that if we strictly applied the terms of the zoning ordinance, it would result in practical difficulties in the use of this property. If we don't allow music, to maintain the viability of a large space like this, and just think of all that goes into it, to heat it, to cool it, to have the types of maintenance that you want to preserve what are really the beautiful architectural elements of this building, it has to be economically sustainable. If they end up that they're fully booked with weddings, maybe they won't have music, but they at least want this as an alternative so that they can keep up a full calendar to support the type of investment they're making. I think I've stated that accurately. And then I'll turn to the rest of the issues are parking related, but as to the music, that's the basis for us seeking the developmental variance this evening.
Any questions?
I have a question. On the second page, it talks about concerts. It says concerts are not allowed, but your most successful events are concerts. So, just curious how you would define that.
Well, that's really the core of what this petition is. Because if you look at the definition of event space, it says that music cannot be, or entertainment, music and or entertainment could not be the primary use. And so the examples that is in the ordinance is concert, play, or stage performance. So what they're asking for is what we then come up with a term of limited, is that, and I don't want to jump to staff report too much, but that's where the 30% of the 50 events comes in, that they want to have music as the primary activity. So that's what they're varying is that provision of 1918 5005 D.
So they could have a concert, 30% could be a concert. Like they could bring in the symphony if they so desire.
Right, but the other point to make clear is that if they're having a wedding and there happens to be music, because it's a wedding reception, that's not counting, because that's already permitted. It is this distinction of a music or entertainment primary use in a limited, I know we get in all these limited access, limited accessory uses and primary uses and getting all confused in our language. But that is really what the distinction is that they're going to are asking to be allowed that limited number of those types of events.
And what is the percentage, I'm sorry?
Microphone.
What's the percentage of the,
Cynthia, microphone.
No, you don't have to hold it. Right?
Don't hold it. Just put it closer.
Yeah, when you hold it, that's when it does. So it's live until you hold it. So don't.
so don't hold it?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. I have a question. So what is the percentage of the concerts that you're going to have at this venue? As far as, in the other petition, it was about 50 events that you're planning on having. So what is the percentage of these concerts? Is it the 15 limited that you named in here?
I will say 30% of 50 would be 15. I think we will see the number 15 in the staff report, at least the staff report that I saw earlier today.
But 50 is a number that's just random, so that might turn out to
50
be
is-
60, and then it could be 30% of the 60.
That's what their request is.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Right,
We
that's
anticipate
understand.
50.
But I'm just trying to explain that that's what it would be. If there's going to be 100, winds up being 100, be 30% of 100.
Correct. And you're-
Now, will all of these things end at midnight again?
Yes.
Okay, now I really have a stupid question. You got all this entertainment going, and it's
Yep.
basically in what I consider from the bank, this is a lobby area. How about the residents getting in? Are they going to be able to just walk through these events? Or is there a way that they will be guided to a different place? And is the balcony still there where they can still look down at the event?
So
Just sort of a couple questions.
probably been some time since at least a lot of us have been in the building, but when you enter the building, there's an entry basically that goes into the event space. But then there's also the entry that feeds into where the elevators are located, and residents access through that separate door, right? Do they also exit through the back? I've forgotten that. And they exit, and they also come in through the back in the parking areas in the back. So they won't, if you remember, for example, Galvin, their law firm was in the, one of the upper floors, and trying to remember all my friends that I used to visit up there. But the bank would be closed, right, in that lobby, and it was closed off, but there was separate access to the building. I hope I answered your question.
I'm sorry. Just to help you out, there are two separate accesses to that public common area where they don't have to go
yeah.
through
Right.
Yes.
the venue area.
If I recall, at the southwest corner of the site facing Hammond, there's a door, you enter it, and it's
Yes.
entirely separated from the event space, the residents. So there is a separate door at the southwest corner for residents, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Staff, do you have any questions? Since there's a new thing on the agenda?
You don't, Tom, we don't have any questions, right?
Okay.
Oh, I don't.
No, we just have an amendment, right?
Right. We have Z-25-02A for the developmental variance for our music and entertainment.
Madam Chairman, technically you still have to go through public hearing.
I was going to do that, but I was announcing
Okay.
to the public what we were going to do, okay? So any public comments or any on remote? Do we have any? Any comments in regard to the music at the venue? Any comments in regard to the music at the venue? Any comments in regard to the music at the venue? Hearing none, I will close this period of public expression. Any other comments from members? Other comments from board members or staff members?
No comments.
Could we? Yes?
I said no
Oh,
comments.
okay, I'm sorry. I guess you weren't close enough to your mic. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, good evening again. So the staff report here for Z2502 Prince A. Developmental variance to allow music and entertainment as a limited accessory use at an event-based general facility. So just wanted to make clear that, and this was shared with you all today, on page 3, we did make a change, amend the staff report so that there is a 5th condition of approval, just compliance with Chapter 97 of the Hammond Municipal Code regarding noise pollution, the noise ordinance as you know it. And I also made note under reviews and approvals that HDEM Director Ron Novak had requested this condition of approval be added, just to really, state that noise is something you guys always need to be concerned about and make sure that you comply with Chapter 97. Since this was separate from your event space approval, he wanted to make sure that that was a condition brought up again, and make sure that it's covered in case it wasn't covered by ordinance. So anyway, taking a look at this, staff recommendation reads as staff has reviewed the petitioner's request and recommends that the BZA grant the developmental variance should the board feel the petitioner has met the standards, subject to the following conditions. 1, approval of the conditional use case known as Z2501 in compliance with all of that case's conditions. 2, approval of the developmental variance cases known as Z2502B, Z2502C, and Z2502D, in compliance with all of those cases' conditions. 3, music ceasing and the event space area closing by 12 a.m. midnight. Events where music or live entertainment serves as the primary purpose shall be limited to no more than 15 separate events in any given calendar year. Activities permitted in Title Section 19.18.50.05, parentheses D, i.e. wedding reception or similar in which music or entertainment is not a primary purpose, are not counted in this limitation. And 5, compliance with Chapter 97 of Hammond Municipal Code as it relates to noise pollution.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to amend the amendment.
I will say for number 4.
I'm going to, can I complete my statement,
Okay.
please? I'm going to amend the amendment in the 2 places where the word pollution is. Please strike those from the record.
Would you repeat that again?
In the 2 places that it says noise pollution, strike the word pollution.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just noise.
Okay.
Right, any other corrections? Do members have any other additions or amendments? I'm concerned about number 4 where it says 15 separate events.
Staff's opinion is that when you have a number of, they have a projected number of 50 events a year, and that 15 is mathematically 30% of 50. And then there was a statement, though, that they could have more or less. And so when you have a variable number, a floating number, it becomes an administrative management problem to know whether or not they are in compliance with an approval if all of a sudden they have 16, now they got an ordinance violation or whatever. So if we are all clear up front that we are sticking to a solid number, then there's no doubt or variability, and therefore no potential for them to be subject to a violation of the approval.
So in a sense, what you're saying and you're telling them, if their number of 50 does change, they need to go to the staff.
It puts
To
us in a
have it
position
changed.
of coming back to the BZA to change that number, and I don't think any of us really want to do that. So as long as we are clear of a solid number, I mean, if they have 10, doesn't matter. If they have 14, doesn't matter. It's the issue of a variable, if you have 55 events, then we have a mathematical challenge here. And it's just be clear, we're all up front, we know what we're expecting.
So that they may only have 15 throughout the year.
Right.
And if they do, they could be, what? How would anybody know? This is a dumb question, I know.
It puts us in a position to have to administratively monitor them every month as to how many events they have, how many are music events, and I think that's just a bit of a management headache.
I think either way is a management headache, but yes, would you like to state your name and address, please?
Sure. Anastasia Frado with
No,
NW.
does any member have any problem if we allow her to speak? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Anastasia Frado with NWI Hammond LLC. And we did talk about, how do we, and we totally understand the challenges with being able to manage that as a percentage in a floating, a floating increase. This space, I also do want to share, and it has, this space is, we are the owner-operator of the building, and we are also the owner-operator of the Reserve or Grand Venue. So we will have a lease with the building to operate this space. And one of the reasons we picked at least 50 events, because obviously our hope is if we could do more than that, that's wonderful. And the days that we don't have events in this space, the residents of the bank will actually be able to come down and utilize this space as an amenity for co-working. And so we totally understand staff's consideration of can we limit it to a certain number. I guess our question would be if we're concerned about managing the 30%, or would the commission staff consider just picking a hard number of 20? And the reality of things, there's 365 days a year. If we're looking at at least 50 events, 20 days out of the year is not a significant amount of days. And our question and request would be, then can we at least, if it's the desire is have a hard date on that type of operation and ticketed event, would you guys consider moving that from 15 to 20?
In other words, you're requesting it moving up 5 for events, just in case, and hopefully you will succeed in having a very successful venue and not have to worry about additional 5 events.
And we just were sort of listening, and this just came up as we're thinking about, gosh, that is a good point of if we are uber successful and downtown Hammond becomes the wedding destination Mecca where everybody wants to come and get married, and we have different type of, we have more events happening and more demand for like a dueling pianos or bringing different artists in. We don't want to have to come back to BZA. I don't know how that would work to be able to come back to amend that.
And you might use it as a marketing tool as far as for residents, as far as you got a discount if you're coming to this musical venue too.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly, we would offer that and communicate those to our residents. We do have a property management company on the residential side. We have a full-time property manager and a full-time leasing agent, and they will be communicating with all of our residents. We have a resident handbook. The residents are fully aware of the event space. And the project that Scott had mentioned earlier, the Barrel House at Zorn, we also have residential over that event space as well at the Barrel House. And so people like, there's a lot of, activity, people like that from the residential side.
With the Barrel House, how long have you been in operation with that? Do you have a lot?
2020 was,
2020, how many normally do you have as far as musical events that you?
and I'll stay at my answer, make sure that Sharon is confirming that, because she's the one who had said, was it last year, it was over 50, about 52 events for the Barrel House?
Okay, that were musical or no?
No, I think musical was only about a dozen, right?
Probably half a dozen last year.
Last year was about a half a dozen musical last year at the Barrel House.
Staff members? Do you have any problem with their request?
I don't know. Mr. Westland?
Yes, Mr. Poland.
Based on the discussion we just had, is this something, the petition said 30% of 50, and then I did the math calculation, and so now the suggestion is a different number. Does that put us in a position, how do they have to amend their petition, or how do we go about doing this?
I think you can go ahead and approve, if that's the desire, right, of the BZA to approve a number under the ordinance. I mean, I think they can establish the number tonight.
Okay. I also want to make it.
No, I don't think anyone would. I mean, I think she's verbally amended her petition. It's a nominal or insignificant change from 15 to 20 relative to who would have to be notified, and anyone who is concerned about 15 would also be concerned and either on the Zoom or in person about 20. So I don't see any notification or issues like that.
Okay. Mr. Gainey?
Yeah, I just wanted, the petition itself and what was included in addressing the notification issue, the petition itself said no more than 30% of events held at the facility. In the body of the letter, the supporting letter, it goes on to say they anticipate 50 per year.
Right. So
the notice, at least for the notice provision, it says 30%. If we had a fixed number, I'll defer to Mr. Westland on that, but it doesn't seem to.
I mean, it's up to the board to decide whether or not they want to accept the number change that is presented by the petitioner. I do have to say that I'm a little concerned about the impact on the Toll Theater, number one. And number two, I want to make sure that we are clear that the weddings and those other types of events are not counted in that number. So we are talking about concerts, I assume plays. Those are the types of things that is in this number. And, 15 is 1 and a fraction per month. 20 is almost 2 a month. And I think with all your other types of events, I'm not sure if you're ever going to achieve that 20.
Mr. Poland, can I just, the 30% figure, while I think has good intention, is tough, because what if they don't hit the 50, and let's say their total number of events is 20? So now are you saying, right, or are we saying as a city and as a Board of Zoning Appeals that only 6 events can be these primary purpose music events? I don't think that's it would basically be an incentive for them to have like other events to pump that number up. So I really think you need to, whether it's 15, 20, or some other number, I think you need to stick with a number.
Not a percentage?
Mr. Westland, I think your point's well taken, because in our discussion, or in my thoughts, yes, what happens if it is only 10 events a year? So that means you have 3. And
Right. I mean, let's say that it doesn't become, I hope Anastasia's correct that it becomes the wedding venue of the universe. But what if it doesn't, right? And they only have, to Brian's point, 10 other events. It doesn't seem fair then to limit them only to 3 music events when everybody was, if the other part of the business took off, we'd be fine with 15, right? Like so, or 20, or whatever number you decide. So I think I agree with Mr. Poland, and there needs to be a fixed number.
yeah, I just think, based on the information presented, 15 is a reasonable number. It's up to the board to decide otherwise.
Board want to make any changes to the 15 and change it to 20, 17, 18?
I think the staff has been working with this for quite some time, and I think you have the pulse of what is needed, what is correct. I agree that the percentage is probably not a good idea.
Well, I would also like to be able to consider them as good neighbors, just in case they have gotten their 15, but then you have something like bed, brushes, and bands, who has lost a place for them to have a recital or anything like that with live music. Or you have a flood at the Toll Theater and they're unable to have a performance where it could not be the neighborhood that takes them in as far as being able to perform the play or anything like that. I don't know. I look for different things in the long run, or things that hopefully never happen. But that's my age. Board members thinking? Or do we want to just go on with the 15?
May I?
Yes, please.
If we're looking at a solid number of 15 per year, is that correct? Is that my
Correct.
understanding?
That's what the staff's position is.
How does that equate to how many per week or how many per month?
Well, 1 and a fraction per month is the mathematical average.
Well, that's
So
why
there'll
that's why I'm asking the question.
So there'll be 3 months that have 2.
Well, I mean, my understanding is if it's per calendar year, it would not be anything per week or per month. It would be overall. I mean, I would assume that you may have these events more often in the summer or
Well, let's not,
They could happen all year long.
But the point is it could
They
happen
during
all
the
year long.
day.
I don't think we're setting anything per month or per week, correct? We're just
no,
setting
we're not,
overall.
we're not.
Yeah.
We're just setting a number.
So there may be a couple extra certain months and none certain months, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
we'll
you.
let you speak.
And this is, in all fairness to Mr. Boland, this is as we're hearing this conversation in real time, had come up with this question about just if it's not a 30%, move it to 20. I appreciate Councilman Westland's comments of, well, 30% might not benefit if you only have 10. 10 events a year. We naturally we're always going to tend to want to think about the future and the growth of downtown as we've been committed with the bank. Having said that, if the staff and commission are, we can live with 15. I'm not trying to negotiate against ourselves here, but that was a question and comment that we, if it's going to be have to be a hard number, then, I think as Sharon had mentioned, and we had about a half a dozen last year at the Barrel House at Zorn. We think it's a really exciting opportunity, and the feedback we've gotten from the community of Michigan City has been really positive with those types of events. So we're excited to do that at the bank, but certainly not trying to cause more confusion, or we have a lot to cover tonight. So just wanted to appreciate everybody's consideration to at least have the conversation about that. Thank you.
Pardon? I would
Yes,
say,
you are.
would be, I would say,
Yeah, you guys have done the legwork on this, I'm fine with that.
So you're at the point, if I may, Madam Chairperson, to kind of help keep us moving this along, accepting the staff report and the findings of, the proposed findings of fact. That's where you're at.
all right, we also have, as far as proposals of finding the fact, any comments from board members in regard to that? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adopt the staff report and additional amendments that have been made as proposed, and the proposed findings of fact into the record?
I'll second.
You have a motion and a second? Roll call vote, please.
Cynthia Hassel,
Yes?
Dan Faulkner,
Yes.
Roger Brock,
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes?
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve Z-25-2, parens A, for the developmental variance allowing music and entertainment as a limited accessory use at an event-based general facility at 5231 Holman Avenue,
With the 5 conditions as amended.
with the conditions that have been met.
Second.
As amended.
And we have a second?
I'll second again.
We have a motion and a second, roll call vote.
Cynthia Hassel,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner, Roger Brock.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Okay, we have two cases that we can we can read together, and we have a correction on one case. First one is Z-25-02, parens B, petition of NWI Holman LLC for developmental variance regarding Title Section 19.18.50.10, small parens A, or parens small a, to allow a petitioner to meet the parking requirements by making an allowance for parking outside the walking distance of 300 feet up to a maximum 600 feet from the main entrance of the event space facility located at 5231 Holman Avenue in a C3 Central Business District in the city of Hammond. And as a correction, in the next case, it's Z-25, parens 2, that would be the correction. Z-25-02 is the correction. Parens C, petition of Northwest Indiana, North NWI Holman LLC for developmental variance regarding Title Section 19.18.50.10, small b, for allowance to consider on-street parking within 600 feet when determined the maximum occupancy for the event space facility located at 5231 Holman Avenue in a C3 Central Business District in the city of Hammond. We can hear about both of them, and we will take a separate vote, correct?
Yes, and then, Mr. Ganny, if you could make sure you clearly distinguish what the difference is between B and C.
I shall. I was just wondering, could we also take up D at this time? Because it's going to be street parking, which is also an intrinsic part of B. I'll just throw it out there. If we could-
Staff has no objection to add D into this, and then as long as you clearly define each
I'll
one.
define, yeah.
So
why-
I'll read D for you, all right?
Yes. you would.
D-25-02, parens D, petition of NWI Holman LLC for developmental variance regarding Title Section 19.18.50.10, small b, for allowance to consider on-street parking when determining the parking requirement for the event space facility in accordance with the Downtown Hammond Master Plan located at 5231 Holman Avenue in a C3 Central Business District in the city of Hammond. You guys talk about all three of them, and we'll vote separately.
Very well. All right, so back before you again for developmental variances, three of them. I'm going to summarize them here at the top to hopefully make this a little easier for us all to follow. So first case is B, and we are essentially asking you to allow parking outside a walking distance of 300 feet from the front door, or the main entrance, up to 600 feet. And fundamentally, because there are insufficient number of parking spaces within the public parking lots within 300 feet of the facility. So we start with the idea we're in a downtown area, right? And downtown buildings don't typically have their own dedicated parking lots. They rely on public parking lots. So in this first petition, we're saying we don't have enough public parking lots within 300 feet of our building to accommodate the folks that would attend the venue. So we're asking, all right, allow us to go to 600 feet. So that's one aspect. That's case B. Case C is our maximum occupancy, whatever our occupancy is determined by our ability to provide parking. Well, we're saying we can't do it within 300 feet. We're asking for 600 feet. So not just within 300 feet, within 600 feet when you're determining the occupancy for the building. Now, then the last case is D, which relates to both requests, because we're saying, okay, not only public parking lots, but also street parking. And I'm going to present to you, thanks to Tom and Brian's effort, the number of parking spaces we now have in the street parking in the downtown area. And we'll have the delineation within 300 feet, within 600 feet, and hopefully we'll meet Patrick's concern here, because we've laid out how many spaces are now in the downtown, which is substantially increased. I was stunned when I started out just doing my own kind of walking tour count with all the kind of the new parking spaces that are added. So this will all be, this three cases are about parking, essentially. So we have talked about what is the parking demand for these folks, right? They're going to have events there. I'll go to 150. We'd scale this up, but just I'm going to kind of give it a baseline, 150 in attendance, which is, you know, the customary. And 150 in attendance, which is the customary attendance for a big event, not the smaller events. And I'm also going to talk about in the presentation when those events 75 vehicles. Scale that up if we have a larger event, but most of theirs are within that 150 range. So that's, for the most part, going to be their high demand. Well, we now know, thanks to the detailed review and some charts that are set forth in our materials, that we have primarily responsible for 183 on-street parking spaces within 600 feet, and 177 off-street parking, so parking lots. So we have a total of available spaces within 600 feet of 360 available spaces. Under the previous configuration of the downtown streets, well, I can't imagine that number, well, I'm just guessing at numbers, but it was maybe a third of that number, but we've added considerable parking to the downtown with the new plan. So we've talked to you about who these folks are, so I won't reiterate that part of it again, but let's go to the parking. In the first case, B, beyond the 300 feet, we have to show that we will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, welfare of the community. Fundamentally, we have insufficient number of spaces in parking lots within 300 feet, but we have, as I just stated, 360 spaces within 600 feet. We think we should be able to count those in a downtown area for an event like this, or for other folks that are going to be locating in the downtown. When we looked at the downtown Hammond master plan, and I brought out some of the excerpts in the supporting letters just to kind of give us a flavor of that master plan, but the fundamental part of that was to create, the vision was to create a walkable downtown. And the idea that having people out in the community is what encourages people to be in a downtown. It encourages business development, encourages people to come to a downtown area. It encourages restaurants, the sort of things that you would have to build up a successful downtown. We now know, we heard the quantum computing project with Purdue is moving forward this week. The idea is to get people out and about in your downtown, and that's what will create images of comfort, the desire to be in the downtown. And Jeff Speck, throughout that downtown Hammond master plan, engineered his plan for downtown with the idea of creating a walkable environments and having a shared urban experience. So we think that from a health and safety and general welfare of the community, permitting parking to be counted within 600 feet, extending to 600 feet rather than 300 feet, makes eminent sense in a downtown. Now, we've said 600 because that's the number where we show that we have a sufficient allocation and quite an excess number of available parking spaces from all that we can imagine. If we were going to Chicago, we know through experience we'd extend that out much further than 600 feet. But it's expected in that environment, if we're going to a theater event or an event, a venue in the downtown Chicago area, then we're going to have to extend further out. And then there are things such as parking garages and so forth that, you know, this downtown may eventually need to accommodate all that it wants to see occur down here. But what we are at right now is we think that allowing the 600 feet makes eminent sense. The 600 feet also goes to case C, which that determines our occupancy. And we don't think that it will pose any safety hazards by having people walk in the downtown, and especially if that's what we're seeking to bring about, and bring about bring to life the vision of the downtown Hammond master plan. And if you look at some of the excerpts from the master plan that show all the thought that went into where these parking spaces are going to be situated, how and why they're situated. They're situated in an effort to give a flow for the traffic, but just as importantly, a flow for the people, and also enhanced green areas. If you've seen these islands now, they feature green areas that break up the downtown and make it a more inviting experience. And that's all part of this idea that people are going to be walking in the downtown and encourage that. So we're seeking approval of Case C on that basis. Case D is about street parking. Well, we didn't put all these spaces in the streets, in the median. You know, we've got the diagonal parking in the, what I'll call the median area, right? And we still have the parking along the curb, the sidewalk area. All of that is designed to feed businesses, feed commerce, feed activity, feed having humans in the downtown Hammond area. And so we think that is precisely what is envisioned within this plan, and it won't pose any particular safety issues. We have heard about they will have somebody, security, that will stay after the event, 30 minutes after the event. So in the event we're concerned about safely getting to vehicles, we'll have a security presence in the area after the events as well. Affecting the area in a substantially adverse manner. We don't believe that allowing us to count up to 600 feet will have an adverse effect, because if we're not allowed to do it, it just makes this whole venue and this whole type of endeavor impossible. And we end up not giving, you know, we don't end up with $29 million of investment. We don't have a business in place that can sustain the architectural features that we'd all like to see continue on. I mean, it's great to have a big, beautiful space, but for it to continue, you've got to be able to maintain it. And to do that, you have to have some activity there that produces some revenue. And this is the type of thing that produces that opportunity. And if we don't do that, you know, we're just going to end up raising buildings and having toothless gaps in our downtown, which is not anyone's intent. If we allow the occupancy, you know, to consider up to 600 feet, you know, it's not our vision to have a sea of parking lots in the downtown. You know, if we went by, you know, what we would require for say a C4 commercial area, yeah, you need available parking for people to drive up, but that's not what a downtown is designed for. It's designed for more density of people, of uses, and then you rely upon street parking, upon public parking, and yes, people are going to have to walk a little further than they do if they stop at Target and want to walk up to the door. That's just an expectation of visiting a downtown area, and for that precise reason, yes, we need to rely on street parking, and certainly Jeff Speck, and he has beautiful illustrations. We're going to see, I can't wait to see in the spring, we saw these new spaces and the plantings that just started to go in toward the end of the season. As we see this mature now, we're going to see this vision come to life, and it's going to invite people to want to spend time in the downtown. And it transforms it elegantly into something that is much better than we had. But to do that, we have to have uses such as this in our downtown, and that it requires us to expand upon what the zoning ordinance would otherwise require, but specifically gives you authorization to craft the specific remedies that are appropriate. And that's why we added, for example, this Title 19. Practical difficulties, if we were not allowed to go beyond the 300 feet. That's what the ordinance says right now. We can't count beyond 300 feet. We just can't get there. There's within 300 feet, there are not available spaces. If we don't get to count the street parking, there are not available spaces. And if we had to limit our occupancy size just to what's available within 300 feet, we can't do it. But one of the things that we want to consider is, and certainly Jeff Speck in his plan spoke to this, there's an illustration that is on, it's page 17 of my developmental variance letter. It speaks to when the demand for this parking appears, and he's got a kind of what he calls a shared demand profile that shows that the usage or the demand for street parking is highest during what we would probably think of as customary business hours. But it goes down in the evening hours, right? We don't have kind of the daily commerce in the downtown area. The offices aren't, oftentimes running past 5 or 6. Well, that's when these folks have their events. They're going to have their events primarily on weekends, some in the evenings, Friday nights, and yes, they'll have some events during what we will call our normal work days, but those are going to be more business type events and of the type that we'd expect in a downtown, but also typically fewer people for those events. So I think it went on the whole that when we look at this, there's sufficient parking now that exists in the downtown after the implementation of these new improvements. Brian and Tom were very, very careful in going through the counting process to see what was there, to anticipate demand, and specifically deciding that 600 feet made sense. It wasn't too far in terms of a walking experience, and it would within that footprint would give us ample number of spaces. So with that, we're seeking approval of those 3 developmental variances, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have for us.
Anyone have any questions? Staff members?
No questions.
Open for public comments. Does anybody have any problems if we do public comments on all 3?
That's fine.
Okay. Anyone on remote, anyone in the public that'd like to speak in regard to any of the 3 cases involving parking? Mr. Mislinky, is that his name?
Mislinky,
Yes. You want to go over
53
your
Munich
comments?
Court.
Okay.
I was just wondering what thought has been given to security for expanding out the parking areas. Will there be some kind of patrols or something that will go through there to avoid any kind of tailgating experiences that people may want to participate in prior to going to this venue? My main concern is bringing back the history of what happened with the Aquavore Club area when they had their activities. A lot of it spilled over into the parking lots and would continue after that place closed. And I was hoping that there would be some arrangement made for when events are there, that there will be security to patrol these areas to make sure that kind of activity doesn't go on outside of the venue.
All right, after we see if there's anybody else that would like to speak, we will have our petitioners address the issue, all right? Anybody else that would like to make comments? Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, before we close, and we have the petitioner have an opportunity to address his comments?
Yeah, maybe, hello, Patrick. So we are going to have security on hand for our events, and they'd indicated that certainly for any of those events that are of, I'll say, a significant number of more than 50, they will have security. Those will be, as typically the case, off-duty Hammond police officers. We don't have authority to obviously patrol public streets, but we've worked very closely with the city. The city sees that this type of event is important, and I think that there will be, first of all, we will have very open communication with the city, including the off-duty officers. It will have a very direct link to the police department. And I'm familiar as well, Patrick, because I was down here too at the times of Aquavor. This is not Aquavor. This is not Aquavor, anything like Aquavor. And that was a different experience. For example, we don't have bottle service and all sorts of other things that are going on. And I also know that Patrick had a really bad experience with the events that went on in the, I'm trying to remember which building that was, but kind of the late night.
The OK Champion building,
Is that where it was?
there was some unauthorized
There was
stuff.
somebody running like an overnight rave or something.
Yeah, and that was not authorized in any way.
It wasn't authorized, but still, it created a huge problem and created all the bottles. And I can just tell you that's not us, and or what will be going on at this facility. We don't anticipate those types of problems, but if we get wind of anything, it would crush our business if we have a feeling of lack of safety. So they're going to be all over it, and they'll be certainly putting in any requests.
Yeah, if I may, before you walk away from the microphone, I think it's important to point out the distinction between the previous bad experiences and this facility, because Wakavor was a bar that had music events that got out of hand. And I think if you kind of understand my concerns about the number of music events, it's an inherent, something that was in the back of my mind of how do we make sure that there is a reasonable expectation, allow the facility to operate, with those options. But your event space definition is different substantially than what a bar is or was. And so you're not bringing the raves in, you're not bringing hooligans. And so I think that's important to understand, that this is a whole different operation when it comes to that type of activity. Nonetheless, I think you indicated that there's going to be open communication with the police department, and we've talked about that with other event spaces, that they should always notify the police of your schedule as to what, when the event is. So if they need to have extra patrol cars run through the area, just to be safe and secure. But I think everybody is hopeful that this is all going to be successful, and we don't want to have any repeats of that bad experience of Aquavor.
Nope. Understood. We agree.
And I'm sure if Colin Patrick has any other comments or questions he has for you that he can come to you personally with those issues? All right. We will close this period of public comments. Any questions or any other comments from the board members or staff? Hearing none, we will deal with Z-25-02, parens B, which is the petition for NWI Holman LLC for developmental variance regarding Title Section 19.18.50.10, lowercase a parens, to allow a petitioner to meet the parking requirement by making allowance for parking outside of a walking distance of 300 feet to a maximum of 600 feet from the main entrance of the event-based facility located at 5231 Holman Avenue in a C3 Central Business District in the city of Hammond. Could we have the staff report?
Good evening again. Yes. So I'll save us the trouble of reading the staff report into the record. It does make note of all the tables that Scott had referenced. So all the hard numbers of parking within 300 and 600 feet are there. Yeah. And just to be clear, yes, that was based on a November 18th, 2024. I did a foot survey with the measuring wheel and went out there and I made sure how many were on each street and then counted in each of the 3 public parking lots. Okay, so staff has reviewed the petition's request and recommends that the BZA grant the developmental variance should the board feel the petitioner has met the standards, subject to the following conditions. 1, approval of the conditional use case known as Z2501 in compliance with all of that case's conditions. 2, approval of the developmental variance cases known as Z2502C and Z2502D in compliance with all of those cases' conditions. Thank you.
Do you have any additional amendments or anything like that on this one? Hearing none. We have proposed findings of fact. Comments from board members? Hearing none. Do we have a motion to accept the staff report and the findings of fact?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Cynthia Hassel,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner,
Yes.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill,
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Okay. We've adopted the staff report and findings of fact into the record. Do we have a motion in regard to the developmental variance? Do we have a motion to approve the developmental variance for Z-25-02 parens B and accept the findings of fact and that they've met all conditions?
I'll make the motion to approve, as long as they meet the conditions in the staff report.
You have a motion and a second? Roll call vote?
Cynthia Hassel,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner,
Yes.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Ready to, oh, you're looking at me, I was going to say what they do now. We'll move to Z-25-02, parens C, developmental variance including on-street parking and expanded available parking from 300 feet to 600 feet when considering maximum occupancy for event-based general facilities at 5231 Holman Avenue. Could we have the staff report?
Yes. Staff recommendation for Z2502 parens B. Staff has reviewed the petitioner's request and recommends that the BZA grant developmental variance Should the board feel the petitioner has met the standards, subject to the following conditions: approval of the conditional use case known as Z2501 in compliance with all of that case's conditions. 2, approval of the developmental variance cases known as Z-25-02 parens B and Z-2502 parens D in compliance with all of those cases conditions. Thank you.
All right. We also have, as far as proposed findings of fact, any comments, questions, statements with regard to proposed findings of fact? Hearing none. Do we have a motion to adopt the staff report and the proposed findings of fact, and that the fact that the petitioner has met all the standards for the developmental variance into the record?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, roll call vote.
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes?
Dan Faulkner. Roger Brown.
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes?
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Do we have a motion to approve the developmental variance for Z-25-02 parens C? And that we've accepted the findings of fact and the staff report, and that the petitioner has met all the requirements.
Have you said that you're approving these with the staff report's conditions?
Didn't I? No?
I think I heard that.
Roger did with the last.
What?
I did.
Roger did.
Oh, it was.
Just to make sure. 'cause I-
Okay,
Yeah, we did.
okay,
You're good.
all right. We're good. We're good? We all right with you? Okay, all right.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a
Thanks, Tom.
second. Roll call vote.
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Roger Brown.
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
All right, then we will move to Z-25-02 parens D, developmental variance including on-street parking to meet parking requirements for an event space general facility at 5231 Holman Avenue. Would we have the staff report on Z-25-02 parens D?
Yes, you may. This one, I'm guessing you can probably predict what I'm going to say for this one. Staff recommendation for Z-25-02 parens D. Staff has reviewed the petitioner's request and recommends that the BZA grant the developmental variance should the board feel the petitioner has met the standards subject to the following conditions. 1, approval of the conditional use case known as Z-2501 in compliance with all of that case's condition. 2, approval of the developmental variance cases known as Z-2502B and Z-2502C in compliance with all of those cases conditions.
All right, we have proposed findings of fact. Any comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adopt the staff report and the proposed findings of fact as presented, and the fact that the petitioner has met all the standards into the record?
A motion to approve.
Roll call vote.
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner. Roger Brown.
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Now, do we have a motion to approve Z-25-02 parens D? And that the board has also accepted the findings of fact, staff report, and that the petitioner has met all the conditions. Anything else? You got everything covered, Mr. Poland?
The petitioner has met all the conditions. Are you referring to development?
Developmental,
conditions?
developmental variance
So you're
conditions.
not saying in the conditions in the staff
Well, they are in the staff report as
Right,
far as
but,
the
you know,
developmental
our
thing.
protocol is that we always have you say the conditions in the staff report, that we've had this
Oh,
conversation.
well, we
before.
accepted the staff report and the
I know,
conditions.
but we've had this conversation.
Okay. We have six.
I'll make a motion, provide the petitioner follows all the conditions in the staff report.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Roll call vote.
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner,
Yes.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill,
Yes,
5 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
we wish you much success. Hope it will be a very successful, and it will turn Hammond around, and that your events will bring in people from neighboring communities to show how great Hammond is. And invite us to come see when you're finished, so we can come take a tour. Okay? Good luck. Okay. Any commissioner comments? Happy President's Day, happy Valentine's Day, happy nicer weather. Any staff comment?
Yeah, I just need a clarification. Shannon, in the packet, the schedule for 2025 still has draft on it. Do we still need to adopt the schedule?
They said it was adopted, they said it was approved.
Sorry?
Thank you for making the
can't
correction
hear
on the date.
Okay, so we have to adopt this calendar. Okay.
All right.
Madam
then.
Chairman,
I'm looking for where I put it, hold on. A notice for one we received at the end of the year did have a wrong date on it for June, and thank you for that correction. Do we have approval of the Hammond Board of Zoning Appeals 2025 meeting schedule? This one, that's where. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, so we have a roll call vote.
Cynthia Hasso,
Yes.
Dan Faulkner,
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Roger Brock,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill,
Yes,
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
I have to admit, I never have remembered approving it. But that's me, okay? Any public comments? Any comments from our people online? All right. So we adjourn this meeting at 8:10.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by
Aye.
saying